Hello and welcome to the last episode of the Reject Pile's Summer 2026 run, and indeed, the foreseeable future. Yes, after 12 episodes, it feels right for me to draw a line under this particular project, and who knows, like a certain sitcom set in a Torquay hotel, maybe that'll be enough to satisfy fans for decades until I dust the format off for a stage show in 44 years' time. In this run, we've analysed the first 3 pages of a sitcom by Annabelle Edmonds, along with comedy sketches by Peter Beer, Sarah Kelly, Mike Cooper, and Sophie Hall, before going deep on the skewer in our most recent episode with Dan Swearitt. And these followed episodes from previous years, where we featured a deep dive into breaking the news again with Dan Swearitt and Ellie Hayward, and that featured material from regular contributor Nick Olukumbere, as well as other episodes covering more comedy sketches from Robbie Fox, James Docherty, Mike Grace, Rob Smythe, and yours truly. I've been helped to perform the material by Amy Tobin, Rob Stevenson, Kevin Welch, Alexis Coward, Ronan Hatfull, Rachel Cook, Jonathan Amphlett, Chris Gladwin, and Annabelle Turner-Wheeler. And of course, I've been joined along the way by resident Reject Pile script editor, Phil Stewart. While it's been an incredibly fulfilling project that's introduced me to lots of great individuals and taught me a lot, not only about comedy writing, but audio and video editing and podcast publishing, it's also been a very demanding project, with the irony being that it has limited the time and energy I have for my own writing and other creative pursuits. Hence my decision. Nonetheless, I hope this has and will continue to add value for those aspiring writers like me. And I'd like to thank every single one of those people that I mentioned for being part of it. But of course, we still have this episode to get to, and what a treat it is. It gives me great pleasure to introduce a very experienced writer and a huge inspiration and influence on me making this podcast, James Cary. James is one of the most prolific voices in British comedy of the last 2 decades, and as you'll hear in our conversation, his work ethic and storytelling insights are incredible. Over the last 20 years, he's written for massive television hits like Miranda and My Family, and co-created the brilliant BBC comedy Bluestone 42. For 8 years, he co-hosted the legendary industry podcast Sitcom Geeks alongside Dave Cohen, and today he's still actively guiding the next generation of writers. You can find his masterclasses online through his YouTube channel and his excellent Substack, The Situation Room, where he shares expert advice on the mechanics of comedy writing. He's also a regular speaker on the circuit. In fact, I actually approached him to ask him onto this show after I saw his talk on writing plots at last year's British Comedy Guide Big Comedy Conference. He's a true master of the craft, an authority on what makes people laugh, and a fascinating conversationalist. And we dive into all of that today. Here it comes. James, hello and welcome to the Reject Pile.
Thanks very much for having me.
Well, thanks so much for joining me. I think in many ways, for me, the Reject Pile feels like a bit of a spiritual successor to your previous podcast with Dave Cohen, Sitcom Geeks. So it's great to have you on as a guest.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we by 222 episodes, I think we'd said most of the things that we had to say. So we thought, let's get off and let somebody else say them. Although having said that, I've now got a YouTube channel, so I'm just saying the same stuff all over again, aren't I?
I think there's still an audience for people to hear the same things. So hopefully it's still adding value.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I listen to it's very easy, and we'll, get right into it. It's very easy when you're writing something to forget how you consume that thing. And so when I'm listening to my favorite podcasts, I just love hearing them talk about the same thing again and again. That's what I like, the feeling of them talking about the thing.
Yeah.
And I still don't take their advice, or I still don't necessarily agree with them, and I still go back for more. And so essentially, I think we're much more, and this is sitcom, isn't it? Every episode's basically the same, and if it wasn't, you would be devastated.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very meta, I suppose. Yeah. So, I mean, I sort of touched on one element of your career, but I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that. So any of our listeners that perhaps are not familiar with your work, do you just want to start by giving us a bit of an overview of what's brought you on your journey to where you are with us today? So
I only realised this latest month that 25 years ago, my first episode of a situation comedy was broadcast by the BBC in October 2001.
Congratulations.
Thank you
on
very
your anniversary.
much. Yeah. So that was 25 years ago. And oddly, I was with the producer of that last week, which was lovely to hang out with Adam Bromley. And so that was called Think the Unthinkable on BBC Radio 4, which had Marcus Brigstock in it. And that episode, or at least one of them, maybe it's episode 2, had Olivia Colman in it. You know, it's like wildly famous people now who 25 years on are not really thinking back to that. But so I've always been a half-hour comedy guy. I grew up watching situation comedy, you know, the tail end of Cheers and MASH and those sorts of things. And I got into writing because I wanted to understand how comedy works. So I'm not really a writer. I didn't get into writing because I love writing. I got into writing because I love comedy. I love jokes. I love laughter. I love, you know, situation comedy. So I hoped to do all that at Cambridge and be a part of the Footlights, but failed to get into Cambridge on 2 occasions.
Okay.
And went off to another university and did a similar sort of thing there. And then moved to London after university and then sort of went through the normal apprenticeship of the time, which there's still a version of which is available today, which is BBC Radio kind of topical comedy plus the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, where I did a show that did quite well. So I'm not from a showbiz family. My parents were dairy farmers in Somerset. And, you know, who on earth do you know that's a writer? Well, no one, of course not. So at least when I told them that I didn't want to be a farmer, they were slightly relieved. But to say, I don't want to be a farmer, it's not a very good way to make a living. I want to be a writer. Okay, that's out of the frying pan and into the fire. So, but they were actually very supportive, but also figured out that if it didn't make any money, I'd have to find something else to do.
Yeah, of course.
So worked my way through, you know, sketchy comedy, but was fortunate enough to come up with a sitcom in my 20s that I knew how to write.
Can you say a bit more about that? How do you mean you knew how to write it?
So the premise of the show was I noticed that I was at the University of Durham and noticed in my early 20s that my fellow Durham people, some of them were like management consultants, telling people twice their age how to run a company.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an inherently preposterous thing. And I'd watched and listened to enough situation comedy to know what a situation comedy should sort of sound like or look like. And so I wrote a pilot script based on that. And so I had an insight into the world of the kind of person that thought, oh yeah, I could tell people how to run their business. And I also knew that it would resonate with the Radio 4 audience who were and still are 50 plus in age and would be driving home listening to Radio 4 going, yes, a bunch of chinless wonders turned up to my office and tried to tell me to push the envelope and run things up a flagpole. And I wanted to punch them in the face. And so that was like a timely idea that I knew how to write. Because I think my general advice to people who want to write situation comedy is to be older, which is obviously not terribly useful, but it does favor a more mature writer because you need to get into different ways of thinking because every single one of your characters has a different perspective and a different worldview that you have to be fair and honest about. And that's quite hard. But I kind of slightly lucked out on thinking of something where I thought, oh, I think I know how to do this.
It is a bit of a gift, really, isn't it? Like quite fortuitous, that situation coming to you because it ticks so many boxes, like you said, which, you know, clearly is what resulted in it getting somewhere. Yeah,
and I had a whiff of, so I mean, The Office was out round about that time.
Yeah.
And I'd loved the radio series of People Like Us, which starred the now much cancelled Chris Langham.
Right.
Which has eventually become W1A and then 2012 and now 2026, or, you know, that sort of thing. Tonally, it had a bit of a whiff of that, but it was still a studio sitcom recorded in front of an audience, which is and always has been and will remain my preference.
Yeah, of course.
Because it just means that the audience you have to make them laugh out loud. You can't hide behind editing and all that kind of stuff. So I did that, and then I did another show. So as a result of that, I worked with Paul Mayhew Archer, who was our script consultant, editor kind of person. He got me involved in writing an episode of My Family and then My Hero, which were BBC One sitcoms at the time. Yep. And then I did Hut 33 for BBC Radio 4, which is about Bletchley Park. And that got me into the radio version of Miranda. And so I worked on Miranda for 2 series. And then through that, I met Richard Hurst and we developed Bluestone 4-2, which is a BBC 3 sitcom, which is not filmed in front of an audience because it's about bomb disposal in Afghanistan. Yes. And then there were sort of bits and pieces before, during and after, all of the above. Which sort of takes us into COVID, where all bets are off and nothing's ever been quite the same again. And I've that whole time since about 2004, I think I've been writing Milton Jones's radio show with him for Radio 4 too. And we just literally recorded possibly the last ever episode last week.
Okay. That's not an exclusive, is it? Is that a scoop for this?
He had an episode commissioned and we've recorded it. And no one's making any promises about anything. But, Milton hasn't sensationally flounced off and Radio 4 haven't said, you will never eat lunch in this town again. So it's like, it is what it is. But, who knows? And in a way, the Reject Pile, I love as a title because the constant feeling of rejection, both in your ideas that never even make it out of the pond, but then the stuff that you did like. So every single thing I've done, pretty much, for every sitcom I've done, I would happily have done more.
Yeah.
So I would happily have done more. Think the Unthinkable. And Radio 4 said, no, thanks, we're done with that. I would happily have done more episodes of Hut 33. And someone somewhere, and I'm not sure it was Radio 4, said, no, I think we're done with that.
Okay. So, I hear what you're saying. It's even in success. Rejection is never too far away.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody,
absolutely.
The person that loves your show says, oh, I flipping love it. It's brilliant. They leave. Yeah. The next person comes in and is like, what's this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing some show about bomb disposal in Afghanistan? Nobody cares about that.
Yeah.
Why would you? So, we tried to reboot it in Somalia.
Okay.
And that would have been great, particularly going onto ships that have been booby trapped by pirates, Somalian pirates, all that kind of stuff, and get the old gang back together, all that kind of stuff. Would have been great. It's like, no. Okay.
Well, never say never.
No, that's just it though, isn't it? I always struggle slightly to watch John Cleese's stuff, and I admire Fawlty Towers. I just don't want to be there when it happens because it's just so cringy, because it's so like, oh no, you're going to do the thing. But his movie Clockwise, which I remember going to see at the cinema with my mum in Bath, we were on a shopping trip and it was on and we just thought, well, let's just go and watch a movie. And so I did. I went to watch it with my mum.
Excellent.
And it was hilarious, but it is one of those films where it's just really like, oh no, this is going to happen and this and this and this. Yeah. And at one point, Mr. Stimpson, played by John Cleese, on his way to a headmaster's conference, says, it's not the despair, it's the hope.
Yes.
And that's the thing. Even when you're so-called a successful sitcom writer, you're still never that far away from being cancelled. And then when you are, you just think, yeah, but I might. And so when you say never, part of me wants to go, well, that's ridiculous. So come on. But the fact is, you should never say never, because if they said, oh, do you want to resurrect Bluestone 4-2 10 years later? I'd be like, yeah. That was great fun. We're all still friends. We have a WhatsApp group, us and the cast. We occasionally just sort of say, hey, I'm in town. Anyone want to meet up for a drink? Or, not that often, but like when Ollie Chris had a show on the National, about 8 of us turned up to watch his play.
That's great.
About World War II and whatever. And we had a drink afterwards and it was all like, hey, how you doing? All that kind of stuff. Because we all went off to South Africa to film the show. So we all got to know each other quite well. We sort of became friends.
We have several recurring themes, as I'm sure you can relate to with your experience on Sitcom Geeks. One of those is, as a writer, obviously someone who's perhaps starting out on that journey that you've described, facing into rejection. I think you have to sort of ask yourself, well, what is the reason you're doing it? And what does value look like? What does success look like? And I think for more people have to probably contend with, well, it doesn't mean getting commissioned or, getting my show on radio or TV than for those that it does. That was just sort of ringing in my mind when you were talking about the friendships you made and those connections. There's like a deeper layer of more human level value that you got from those projects as well.
Yeah, and stuff that you wrote because you just had to write it. So the best thing I've ever written in my entire career is a play about science and religion called The God Particle.
Yeah.
Which was originally, I think I pitched it at Radio 4, and I think they had a half-hour Sunday comedy slot that opened up. And so I pitched this comedy, which I'd sort of had this idea for anyway, and it's basically about a vicar and a quantum physicist arguing in a slightly Gen X kind of way about religion. That wasn't accepted. But then I just thought, I just want to write it as a play. So I wrote it as a play. And then someone kind of produced it, although I ostensibly paid for most of it, and it kind of broke even. And then I kept on putting on productions of it and sort of doing little tours of it. And then I made an audio version, and then I made a video version. We recorded it at the Merlin Theatre in Frome, and Frome's now quite cool.
Yeah.
And I'm still proud of it, and the people watched it, and it feels like you're watching a sitcom because it's very sitcom-y, and then we recorded it in front of a studio audience. And so I think you write this stuff because you can't not do it. This is the thing I really want to write. And sometimes it's the thing that everyone wants to watch, but that's quite unlikely.
Yeah.
So I'm much more active on LinkedIn than I used to be. And I think like every writer on LinkedIn, we're all wondering, what are we doing here? What is this? And we spent our whole life.
Probably plenty more of those management consultants knocking about there as well.
Well, except now my LinkedIn profile's all other writers. The algorithms just said, oh, this guy's a writer. Let's not show him any management stuff. Let's show him other writers complaining and yearning for some sort of validation.
Yeah.
Which is an awful lot.
The echo chamber. It's a social media.
Yeah, it's an echo chamber, but a lot of self-pity. In one sense, I feel sympathy because when I started out in the late 90s, I mean, who was a writer in the 90s? It's like that wasn't a big deal. There were no screenwriting master's courses, or you couldn't study, even media studies wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, in my view, it still isn't. But but it wasn't there was nowhere to learn craft. You just sort of had to do it. To which I would say, well, yeah, I mean, you've watched sitcoms. I mean, just do that. I mean, it's not rocket science, really. I've made 222 podcasts about it. It's like, just listen to those and practice. So I don't want to make it sound, I don't want to be cruel and make it sound easy and straightforward, because it isn't. But you have to be in it because you want to do it, and you can't not do it. Which thereby, and this is probably my show. So I do a one-man show at the moment. It's called God, the Bible and Everything in 60 minutes. But the next one I think will be called Living in a Sitcom. And I'm writing a book at the moment called Field Notes from a Sitcom Writer about this new show that I'm writing, which is almost certain to fail, called The Lab. And I'm aware that I am a sitcom character in my own life, because I'm still going. I'm still trying to write sitcoms when the universe is very much saying, I honestly don't know why you're bothering to still do this.
Yeah.
This doesn't make any just doesn't make any sense. Why are you doing this? There are so many other people trying to do this, and half-hour comedy is very much not flavor of the month. And therefore, the only reason I would keep doing it is because I can't not do it.
Yeah.
And so that's why, why be a writer? There's no rational reason to be a writer. Be a writer because you want to write. And that is the end in itself. And money is something you need in order to keep writing. And if you can make money through your writing so you can keep writing, well, that's brilliant. It's unusual.
Yeah.
And at the moment, it's not even normal for me. I am also making money touring by doing live comedy. I'm also making a living making podcasts professionally for one or two organizations. I'm doing other sort of bits and pieces here and there. I would rather be writing 6 episodes of a comedy, and I would drop everything immediately in order to do that. But that's just not the world I'm in at the moment. But the only reason I keep going and keep hoping for that is because it's just the one thing I really want to do more than anything else in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a passion, isn't it? And I suppose there are very few people who can be paid to do their passion all the time.
And they're the ones who are most public, and they're the ones who are most, I mean, it's even worse with novels, because the Pareto principle of novelists is 1% of novelists sell 93% of all the books or something like that. I mean, it's not even 80-20. It's basically Stephen King and J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
James Patterson, The Child. That's basically it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Your literary fiction, your Booker Prize winning novels, they don't sell. Even if you won a Booker Prize, you're probably not going to make a living just as a novelist, because you're now a Booker Prize winning novelist. You might scrape a living, depending, as long as you don't live in Primrose Hill or Hampstead, if you're happy to live further out.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so we've got this illusion of success, but the actual financial independence, which means that you're a proper writer,
it's a myth.
It might as well be a myth, because it applies to so few people.
I think what you were just describing, the projects you've got on at the minute, I imagine that's far more common. It's this idea of like a patchwork portfolio type existence and career.
Yeah. And I think some people see that as frustration or failure or whatever. I find all of the individual things I do super interesting.
Yeah.
The only thing I couldn't do is apply for a salaried job and then do a salaried job. It's too late for me. I'm 50. I can't possibly ask someone's permission to go on holiday.
No, that's not how you roll.
I can't do that.
I can relate to that. But I also relate to what you're saying about you have to write it. So there's this internal compulsion that is, yes, I'll start that new project. Yes, I'll create a podcast. Sounds like a great idea. So we sort of our own worst enemies,
actually,
I guess.
what was funny was, so I have a podcast which is currently in abeyance called Stand Up Theologian. And I started it. So I'm a, Christian as well as a writer and all that kind of stuff. And so I like putting all these things together, hence the God Particle, my play and all that kind of business. And so I just thought, well, I'll do 8 just to as a solo thing, interviewing people I kind of know or whatever. And I sort of done 8 and I just thought, well, this is quite easy. I'll do 10, I'll do 15, I'll do 20. Yeah. Right, that's it. I'm going to stop doing it. I'm not doing it anymore. I've decided I'm going to stop. I could just do a couple more though, because I've just had this idea for this and this and this. And so eventually I got to about episode 34 and I was like, right, that really is it. I now need to stop for the spring, summer. I'll be back in the autumn. I already regret saying I'll be back in the autumn.
Yeah, you can't say that.
Because I've already slightly committed myself to that. So I think a lot of writing and avoiding the frustration is to work out what kind of person are you? What kind of writer are you? Where do you do your best work? How do you want to do this? Given that, I think I said at the end of my book, writing that sitcom, given that failure is basically certain and that success is an outlier, what do you want to do? How do you want to do this? And so you want to maximize your chance of success as much as possible, obviously. But let's be under no illusion that the BBC are going to make 3 sitcoms next year by people you haven't heard of, and maybe 3 by people you had. Daisy May Cooper gets to do whatever she wants. Mackenzie Crook gets to do whatever he wants. There are these magic people who just they just get work. And, people like their stuff. I don't care for the Detectorists or Small Profits. I like proper half-hour, laugh out loud, big, jokey, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, funny, whatever. Yeah. So it's not my preference, but it doesn't make me cross that people like it. People like it, that's fine. But the number of slots that they've got for your sitcom and the number of people who want one of those slots, it's like, just don't kid yourself. But also don't underestimate the fact that what are you asking them to do? You're asking them to spend about 1.6 million quid on your idea.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think there's still that sense of I should be allowed to have a go. It's like, well, this isn't a question of having a go. This is spending an awful lot of somebody else's money and it has to succeed and other people's careers depend on this because a controller doesn't want to commission a clunker. So is this actually funny? I don't know. I just think it'd be really fun to do this kind of show in which it's like, oh, no. 9 o'clock on BBC Two. That's not your sketch pad.
Yeah.
What is this? Why is this funny? Why are people going to keep coming to write? And all these annoying questions that executive asks that are...
They ask them for a reason.
Yeah, they are. They're incredibly annoying questions.
There was something you said a moment ago that I did want to just pull back to, though, because I think you were talking about the compulsion to write something and the end product of that is the thing that you've written. But one of the drivers for me in making this podcast was that wasn't enough for me, that having a Word document or a PDF is not the finished product that's up here. And yet, as you've described, the delta between that and then the BBC spending 1.6 million on making your idea is huge. So I think we are seeing more and more, aren't we, of people just making their own things. And I think, thinking back to listening to you on Sitcom Geeks, I think your view on that changed, didn't it?
Yeah,
sort of evolved.
It did. Definitely changed.
Where do we find you now on that topic? The idea.
Yeah, definitely. I've now full on gone the other direction. So when we were starting out doing that podcast, I was of the belief, and I think I wasn't wrong at the time, and then became wrong at the time. But it was my belief, which is still broadly speaking true, that there really aren't that many great scripts out there. And great scripts do get a bit of attention. They do get noticed. And obviously at that point, some people say, yeah, but I've written a great script and no one's, okay, do you want me to say it? It's not that great, is it? You know what I mean? It's like, I've written a great script and I'm getting nothing off it. No. If it was a great script, you would have got some interest in it, which would almost certainly have gone nowhere, and that's fine. But it would have led to something else, a more conversation, another idea, push you further on, all that kind of business. So, but now there are so many scripts, and actually there are quite a lot of scripts that are okay. And because of this tightening of, there's not much work on other people's shows. Mm-hmm. So if you do a good script, the idea that you'll be offered work on someone else's show seems quite unlikely now.
Yeah.
And so even the shows that were on before, they're not on, so I was I wrote an episode of My Family. I wrote 6 episodes of My Hero. I co-wrote 2 episodes of Citizen Khan. You're Not Going to Write Not Going Out. That's Lee Mack and Danny Peake, and they're not asking for help. And, and I don't know Lee Mack at all. I know Danny and I love him. He's great. He's a lovely guy. So I wish him nothing but good things. But that's not available to you. So I think he is now actually running a show based in Northern Ireland, which does have some new writers involved. But these things are almost like special ops and projects. So they're not the industry normally. And so I think there used to be a bit of a advantage in, if you have limited time to do something, I think spend it on making your script as good as it can possibly be. Mm-hmm. Particularly if you're not really that interested in making your own stuff or being in it or producing it, or you have no interest in it. I think that's, but also I do think if you don't watch YouTube, don't make YouTube videos.
Yeah.
If you, so I think just be honest about what you consume and what you like doing. But I do now think that the means of production are so easy now that you could make something that's broadcast quality yourself, almost entirely on your own, if not nearly on your own. I am speaking to you via an iPhone 17 that I've recently bought, partly in order to improve the quality of my YouTube videos. And I'd plan to make a lot more YouTube videos. And you can't help but notice that YouTube is available to watch on your television.
Yes.
And the numbers say that YouTube is watched more than Netflix on television. And so there's nothing to stop you making a sitcom for YouTube.
Yeah.
So you could do that. Mm-hmm. But the caveat, I would give two caveats to that, is three. One, only make a YouTube sitcom if you watch YouTube. And secondly, don't try to make it like a TV show that happens to be on YouTube. YouTube is sort of its own thing with its own grammar and with its own speed. It's much quicker than television. Television is deathly slow in comparison to YouTube. And the people that are watching YouTube just see stuff and immediately process what it is. And so don't make your 1996 tribute act sitcom and put that on YouTube, because that'll just look weird. It'll look like it's already archive footage. Now, what you could do is I saw a video of like a BBC documentary from the 70s, and they managed to grade it just about right and had people talking, and it was so accurate, it almost wasn't funny.
Right. Okay.
But, but you could do that now if that's the kind of thing you think you would watch on YouTube.
Yeah.
And so I think the warning is to make stuff for the medium that you actually like, but make it according to the rules of that. The third thing is, I think unless you are just a natural everyman performer, I would just think about what sort of audience are you going after. So I would make something specific for a particular audience. So if you find conspiracy theories fascinating, then make a sitcom about conspiracy theorists, but make it the kind of sitcom about conspiracy theorists that conspiracy theorists would really like.
Yeah.
Because whenever you see a conspiracy theorist on a mainstream sitcom, they're an idiot. And conspiracy theorists are not idiots. They're actually often too clever by half and spotting links where there aren't any or whatever.
Yeah.
And also half of the conspiracy theories are true. We just don't know which half.
Yeah.
It's like we're running out of conspiracy theories because the ones we had are like, okay.
That's actually a thing.
That's actually a thing, is it? Yeah. So for me, going back to being a stand-up theologian, I'm making the kind of thing that I would love to watch. And it's specific for a specific audience who didn't know that a comedian could do a comedy with the thing that they love. And it could be, the example I always use is beekeeping. If you're really into beekeeping, make a sitcom about beekeeping, about beekeepers that beekeepers would absolutely love and get their non-beekeeping friends to watch.
Yeah.
But you do need to find a crowd, because if it's for everyone, it's kind of for no one. Whereas BBC One are trying to make comedy for everyone. So you don't need to bother with that. And to do that, I think would be a waste of time.
Yeah.
So I think the specificity is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So James, this show is called The Reject Pile, and we've talked a bit about this already, but obviously the one thing that unifies all of us, our guests and our listeners, is that our work gets rejected. So have you got one specific rejection story that you're happy to share with us? What's something that sticks in your mind?
For me, the biggest, most annoying rejection, I think, was when we pitched Think the Unthinkable to BBC One to be a TV sitcom.
Yeah.
And there was another one as well. I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was frustrating because not only was I forced to change some of the cast to people who I didn't think were particularly preferable,
Right.
and therefore annoyed one or two people perfectly reasonably. When it was not commissioned, I think the note was, this just feels a bit BBC 1.5. It's not quite for BBC One. It's not quite for BBC Two. And so all of that was quite frustrating because it actually went really well. And the thing about BBC One is they want stuff that feels like it could be on BBC Two because that makes it quite sophisticated. So, and so that's led me to, and I've actually, so there is an episode of Sitcom Geeks where I said this theory to the very delightful Saskia Schuster, who was the head of comedy at ITV. And I think it may have taken place after, or maybe it was before, but I think after Richard Hurst and I, who did Miranda, pitched a show for ITV. And it was a family sitcom about a mum and a dad. What was it called? Parental Guidance, I think it was called.
Okay.
And it was about a mum and a dad who had wildly different styles of parenting. And for one of them, it was, you do you, you be you. And if you want to, if my little boy wants to wear a tutu and dance around in the park, I will drive him there and watch him do it and be proud of him. And the other parent is like, what trainers are all your friends getting? You'll want those, won't you? I'll get you everything and so two entirely reasonable ways of parenting. One is you be yourself and express yourself. And the other is don't be a weirdo. Come on, just look, you'll be happy if you fit in. And it's all entirely projection, isn't it? So the one who's saying you do you is the individualist. The one who's saying just fit in is obviously, that's her preference
Conformist.
as well. Yeah, the normie, whatever it is. So, and it was about that. And we wrote a really funny pilot script at the exact time when ITV then basically publicly announced they had absolutely no interest in doing scripted half-hour comedy. And so we then had to go through this charade of a read-through with Kevin Ligo, who I don't think turned up in the end, but sent some other people to come and watch it. It's like being interviewed for a job that you already know has been given to somebody else. The upside of it was that I worked with a couple of people I know from radio who I like very much, but who were never going to be considered as famous enough for ITV. So the whole thing was already dead on arrival. But I did get to work with Phil Davis, who is a brilliant actor, sort of comedy actor kind of guy who is like turns up in various things. Like in the first episode of Sherlock, he's the cab driver.
Yeah, it was in Quadrophenia. Is that right?
Probably. And you've seen him in loads of stuff and it's like, oh, he's that guy. And he's lovely.
Yeah, I think I know you mean.
Yeah. And the daughter, 16-year-old, was played by, I think, someone slightly older, who was this beautiful girl from North London, who was the daughter of Mark Knopfler.
Okay.
And I was working out, I don't think you quite understand how wildly famous your dad is.
Yeah, of course.
Your dad's Brothers in Arms album, I think, has only been outsold by Michael Jackson. This is like Elvis levels of record sales. And I think she only had that sort of inkling that dad was a bit of a big deal for old men.
Yeah.
Like, well, yeah, kind of, but so there are upsides to it. But anyway, it wasn't commissioned. And when I talked to Saskia about it and she said, well, I think the problem was blah, blah, blah. I think the problem, and she does the thing that you always get where they tell you what the problem is, to which you could reasonably say, oh, okay, I can change that.
Yeah.
And they, no. Okay, so that isn't the reason. There is only one reason, is he didn't like it. Well, no, it's not that I didn't like it. Well, no, but if you had liked it, you would have found the money to make it. Well, except we could only make 4 comedies, not 5, and this was the 5th. Yeah, but I know that in other situations, I've heard people like you say, we only had the budget for 4, and I absolutely insisted we had to have the budget for 5 to make this thing.
Yeah.
You would have done that if you really liked it, and you didn't, and there is nothing I can do about that.
Yeah.
So I don't want to know the reason why you say you turned it down, because I already know the reason why you turned it down. It's because you didn't like it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so I think that's kind of the awful truth that I've come to, which is I don't want to know the reason because there's only one reason, and it's they didn't like it.
Yeah. How do you respond to that? What does that give you in terms of actionable learnings from the experience?
I think it just means that you are slightly more humble about what is you have control over. And so, I can't, it does help. So for example, I'm now developing another sitcom called The Lab, which is a studio sitcom set in a forensic lab. It's CSI meets the IT crowd. basically. And no one's asked me to do this. I have literally just decided I'm going to write it. I'm going to get the best cast I can. I'm going to hire a room in the middle of the West End in September. And I'm just going to invite everybody I can think of to say, I've got a new sitcom. I think this would be great in a studio. That's what I've written it for. How about this? I keep hearing that they want studio sitcoms, and I keep being told that nobody wants to write them. Well, do you know what? I've written one, and at no expense to you, and at an expense of a month's work. So that's what, £5,000, and the hire of a venue to do this. That's probably another 900 quid. I've written this thing and I'm pushing it on for you. And my chances of success, I would say, are almost zero. And the fact is, all I need is for one person just to go, I love it. I love it. We've got to get that on TV, haven't we? Come on, we've got to be able to do that. And I'm just like, yeah, no, I love it. And they won't love it for the same reasons that I love it. There'll be a whole bit that they've possibly misunderstood about the point of the thing. And it's like, hope they never figure out that wasn't actually the joke or whatever. So you just hope that someone's just going to latch onto it and just go, oh, I just laughed and it was lovely. And I just thought I want to watch another one. But that's literally all you can get a pilot script to do. And so if that doesn't happen, it's a lightning strike, really. If that doesn't happen, I'm not going to stay up all night just thinking, oh, I should have added this joke. I should have done this and that character's a mistake or that. It's like, no, I don't think so. There's 5 different versions of that same idea that I could have written or that other people could have written. I've gone with this. I've pitched this. I've rolled the dice. And sometimes it comes up 2 6s and sometimes it comes up 2 1s. And I'm going to need to roll 2 6s for this to go anywhere. But also it's useful to show I know what I'm doing. It's a funny show. And the most likely positive outcome is someone will say, oh, we're trying to develop this show with this other person and it's not really going very well. Could you come and help us with it? Because you clearly know what you're doing. Because you did Miranda as well, didn't you? Yes, I did. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So why don't you come in and talk about that? And so you do this kind of charade dance thing.
Yeah.
Because somebody might just, and for the same reason, that I don't recommend it, but it's the same reason people go to a nightclub and find someone to dance with and then they end up getting married. It's like it could happen and it could be a very, very happy marriage.
Yeah.
But if you never go to a nightclub, it will never happen, in which case come up with another way of meeting someone to marry. It just helps if you have a very healthy sense of there's just a limit to what I can do.
Yeah. And I think it's having your own idea of what's the end product that you're working towards and what's your own assessment of what good would look like. I suppose there's, as you say, the likeliness of being commissioned off the back of it is almost zero. So if you or one is content with that and just it'll be a great night, I can relate to this. I've had experiences as well where I've put my energy into something that is effectively a stage show. That's not a waste of time. That's still a good experience. And you're happy with the end result of that, even if, it doesn't lead to something else. Yeah. So it does. It sort of, again, it kind of feels like it's in that realm of knowing why you're doing something and being driven to kind of make it yourself effectively. All sounds good.
Yeah. I wish you luck with it. Well, thank you very much. I'll let you know when it's on. It's all mindset. So much of this stuff is mindset and perseverance. And because, I would call it providence. Other people call it luck. The more you stick at it, the luckier you become.
Yeah.
And the reality is, because of my track record and my CV, I could get an email. There could be an email in my inbox now, and I'm not checking my email now. I could have an email now from my agent who says, tomorrow, could you go into Objective? Because they've got this thing, they've got a real problem with this sitcom script and they want you to fix it because somebody worked with you on a thing and it gets commissioned. And then I'm writing the first series and then I'm writing the second series and the third series. It wins a BAFTA and it's like, it's not even my idea, but I'm now the busy guy doing this show. And it's like, that could happen. I tell you why, it won't happen though, if I basically throw my toys out the pram and tell everybody, don't you know who I am? I've been doing this for 25 years. You're all idiots. I know what's funny and storm off. Well,
or if you go, this is enough for me, I'm going to go and be a management consultant. Yeah. It's again, what you were just saying there about luck or providence. There's another episode in this run of episodes of this show
Yeah.
where we're talking about just this thing. And
Yeah.
it's this idea that you have to be in the place for luck to find you. And if you are not writing that sitcom or, not putting things out there, it's a lot harder for the luck to find you. It's not impossible, I'm sure. But,
Yeah.
it's
all about those
increasing
little
your
margins. It's so if you do get a meeting with someone who liked your script, they're still not making that script because there'll be some reason. There's always a reason why we know. And they'll say, "What else have you got?" So have 2 ideas ready to go. Have one that you've really thought about quite a lot, and have another one that you think, there's something in this that you can then have a conversation about. You can say, I've often thought there should be a show about this world because these people are trying to do this sort of thing and those people are trying to do this sort of thing. And they might go, my dad used to do that. That's really interesting. Yeah. I've often thought, and suddenly you're away and they go, oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Well, if you get anywhere with that, let me know.
Yeah.
They're not interested. And then you pitch the third thing, which is almost you came up with it whilst you sat outside having a coffee because you got there an hour earlier in case you were late. And you were thinking, what's the one extra idea that I could pitch if I just burn through the other 2 ideas? And that's not a terrible idea to have that. And you can be honest and just say, to be honest, this is a very new idea for me. Don't say I'd literally thought it up an hour and a half ago. But you can say, is there anything in this? And they might go, yes. How about if it's this? And you're like, in which case it could be this. And then they say this. And then suddenly you've put something together. So you're but none of that happens. That meeting didn't happen if you didn't have a decent script.
Yes.
So you still need a really good script to demonstrate you can do the basic, which is write a funny script, because that's now assumed you can do that. And so your script needs to demonstrate that, or at least show that you've got enough to work with so that you can figure out the rest.
We were speaking earlier about the nature of your career at the minute, the patchwork or portfolio type career. And you've listed many different things that you're working on. So I wondered if you'd be happy to sort of talk us through what does a day or a week or a month in the life of James Cary as a man with many projects. What does it look like? Because for many people, myself included, we're salaried working for the man, and it's difficult to imagine a different lifestyle.
Yeah.
So could you talk to us about that?
So I do now, partly because I listen to stuff like Cal Newport, who is a productivity guy, who's like a professor of computer science at Georgetown University. Deep work. He wrote a book and that kind of stuff. But through listening to all that, I've become much more rigorous so that I basically know that I am best in the mornings and I should do the hardest work, that's original writing, first thing. So I tend to, at the moment, my kids go to school. We used to home educate, but now they're at school. One of them's just left or was about to leave. But the other one I'd say take in by 8 o'clock. And I want to be at my desk by 8:30. And that's the point where I'm just going, right, I've got a script on the go. I need to do some hard yards on this for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I try to only now do 2 different things in the morning. So like from 8 till 11, I'm either writing a script or developing an idea. And then the second half of the morning, I might be doing something that's doing an outline for a different thing, or just I've got to finish off rewriting this other project. And then last thing, I might do some prose writing, like a blog post, which could also be a book. So I'm writing this book at the moment called Field Notes from a Sitcom Writer. And it turns out I can just sit down and write 1,500 words in about an hour. But I'm writing about what I'm doing. I'm writing about being a writer. And I find that incredibly easy. But I'm also giving something about myself and my journey and my life and all that kind of stuff as well. So I try to do all that stuff in the morning. And then in the afternoon, I might be making YouTube videos for the Situation Room. I might be making podcasts for Faith in Kids, which is a Christian family organization. I might be having meetings. I try to avoid meetings in the morning. So I really protect that space in the morning to write. But some of that is stuff that I haven't chosen to write, that I'm being paid to write, like copywriting, which I don't do much of. But again, through my various offline activities, there might be someone who just says, oh, could you come and rewrite these scripts, or could you come and do this for that? And I'm just like, yeah, sure. Day rate sort of thing.
Yeah.
I find it quite interesting. Meetings, podcast recordings, YouTube videos in the afternoons. Try to make sure I stop at 6:30, 7 o'clock. especially because I might have started at 8 in the morning. But sometimes I might go for a walk between 8 and 9 in the morning, depending on the weather. I might go for a walk after lunch. I try to be out for an hour. The other day, I just went to a local planning meeting of South Somerset District Council. Even though they were talking about developments had nothing to do with me, they were just in the county. I just thought, I wonder how they actually go about making planning decisions, and I'm just going to go there. I wasn't there for the whole time. I just went for the first hour, and I just thought, that's interesting. And so I quite often make myself go to things that I might not otherwise do. And I just think that's worthwhile to have experiences, because at some point you need to know how an incredibly boring planning meeting is going to go. There's like having grown-up experiences and just doing things. Yeah, it's kind of research for stuff I don't even know about. So I try to embrace those within reason as much as possible.
Yeah.
So, and I would also rather earn less money and do that more often, and also go to places with my wife, because the kids are at school or one's about to leave. So we could just bunk off and go to see a castle, because we both love history and that kind of stuff, and just go, we'll do it now. Because when you're 78, well, A, you may not make it, but B, it might be quite awkward and difficult to do it. So just do it now. You don't have to, make the most of the fact that you don't have a salary job. Because again, you then just go, you realize, I want to write about this. In a month's time, something comes up and you just think, oh, weird, I was in a castle and there was a plaque about this and there was this guy who was trying to do this, which is a bit like the thing that you're talking about. Just general knowledge, really, all that kind of stuff.
I can relate to that. Yeah, I get all sorts of inspiration when I'm out and about. Just, when you least expect it to hit you. You were talking about having those ideas 2 and 3 when you're in the meeting with someone, but you need to have that really good script to get you in the meeting. So just what are your general thoughts, and maybe any advice for the listeners starting out as to what is a good use of their time for trying to get that good script? We've got competitions and open door shows. You kind of alluded to that at the start, that I guess when you started out, it was a clear progression path, and now maybe it's more nuanced than that. But I suppose one way of putting this is, if you were starting out today, what would your strategy be to try and get yourself to the point where you're in that room?
Yeah. So I would, before we get on to writing a sitcom script, particularly if the sitcom is what you really, really want to do, I would make your own stuff. And that was very difficult in the late 90s because TV cameras were very expensive, and anything that wasn't a TV camera really didn't look the same. Video, something shot on video really didn't look very good. And now your iPhone SE 2 is shooting better than that handheld camera from 1998 that cost your uncle £4,000. I think it is worth making your own stuff, or having your own blog, or just doing your own thing where you're just sort of getting your reps in about just doing a regular writing thing. So maybe you just decide to do a sketch a week on Instagram and you just put it up. And just do 30 weeks, do 50 in a year. Just take off Christmas and New Year. But other than that, just do one a week, and 3 of them will be really good.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them might do quite well. But it means that when you send somebody the script, you can also say, I made these videos and this one did quite well. And you won't know which one is going to do well. You can post 50 videos and it's a complete lottery as to what people suddenly go, and it won't be your favorite one.
And are you saying that from your own experience as well, that maybe some of your successes were a surprise to you, or was the things you thought were
I just know enough to know that the videos that you post, that you pour your heart and soul into, in the same way that the essay that you took extra time to write, which got 63%, and yet you stayed up all night, from scratch, and got a first on this other thing, and you slightly resent it. But the person marking it didn't know, and one's just better than the other one, and you can't tell. So I think it's the humility to know that you don't know.
Yeah, you're not in the best objective position.
Yeah. And that's why I went to the bother of doing an interim read-through for my lab script, my forensic lab script, just to go, the plot makes total sense to me, but I think it makes sense, but I'd quite like 19 strangers to be laughing all the way through, rather than suddenly the last stop on page 19, because now it's baffling as to what's going on. So again, the humility on the process. So just doing stuff regularly will just help you get better at it, or just make an audio podcast series, or like, I was just thinking how much I loved Adrian Mole, The Diary of Adrian Mole, aged 13 3/4. And I was about that age when it came out, I think.
Perfect.
And it wasn't really aimed at 13-year-olds. It was
Yeah.
aimed at adults.
Yeah.
And it was a commentary on the 80s that I now, in my 50s, understand more what it must have been like to have been an adult in the early 80s. Terrifying, actually, with interest rates and unemployment and just a whole load of, as Thatcher was sort of completely reconfiguring everything and everyone was going out of their minds. But you could just do a Substack that's fictional, that's just a diary of someone that you've made up. It could be, this is what this person writes at the end of their shift working as a paramedic, and they've got a complete messiah complex. They're a comedy character or whatever.
Yeah.
So whatever you can do that's achievable and regular, so that if you send someone a script, particularly if it's not competition related, and I think competitions are in danger of being a bit of a distraction, and winning a competition feels like an end in itself, and it really isn't. It really doesn't open doors in the way that you might think. You'd be much better off just focusing on trying to get meetings with people who might be able to make television programs, if that's what you really want to do. So making your own stuff, and that, you say, you can do it on a phone. If you love, Doctor Who audio stuff and you want to make a sci-fi adventure, you could make Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That is not beyond one person's ability now. Get some friends to record it. You can add all the sounds, and some people love doing that kind of thing. I've thought about doing that because I love audio, and I'm technically competent now using Logic to do that if I wanted to. So whatever medium almost doesn't feel like work. Back in the late 90s, cameras were difficult. There was no internet to speak of. Edinburgh Festival. You just put on a show. And I wrote a show with some guys I was at university with, and we were nominated for the Perrier Best Newcomer Award. And that helped, got some meetings. I'm not quite sure exactly what it did, but it was, it lifted us above about 400 other people trying to do kind of the same thing. The Edinburgh Festival is still a thing. You could do it, but also you could just start a comedy night in your own local town and put on all that kind of stuff. So I think it helps to do stuff, but especially if it's online in some way or another, you can point to it.
Yes. Yeah.
That helps, especially if there are 20 or 30 of them and everyone says that's the best one, that you can then send to the person to say, I did this.
Yeah.
And the audience have decided which the best one is.
Yeah.
And then you've got the script. And the problem with your script, I can tell you without reading it, is probably the plot, because characters, I very rarely come across a situation and I think this situation cannot work.
Okay,
I almost never come across a character where I just think there is no version of this character that could possibly be funny. That could all work depending on the plot of the episode. And it turns out that plotting is a lot harder than it looks, and a lot harder than I realized people found it. And so I would talk a lot about character, and character is really important, but actually plot is really, really difficult. And I've just been making YouTube videos, and the thing I've written, and I've got it on my wall over here, the setup for your show, personalities and precinct. So your characters and their interrelationships in the precinct. But actually your characters need a pursuit. They need to be pursuing something in the episode, which is why it can't be their first day at work.
Yeah.
A third of all scripts are the protagonist's first day at work. And the protagonist is now already less funny than every other character in the show because they've already started. And this person is now basically being shown where the photocopier is and is being polite to everyone because they're not a psychopath. They could be a psychopath, in which case the first day of work plot would work. But I think you'd struggle to have a sitcom character which is a psychopath. Although there are a lot of comedies and comedy dramas now where everybody's awful. And I don't watch those.
No, okay.
Personalities, precinct. But then your character needs to pursue something, but they need to pursue something particular. What exactly are they trying to do? By when or what?
Yeah.
And almost no scripts have this. And the character's trying to do something fairly general to make their life better slightly for a reason I can't quite fully discern. And then they go about it in a bizarre way.
Yeah.
So the fifth one is passion, which is not the best word for it, but they need to go about it in their own particular way, according to their own passion. So if your character is a list maker, they will best assume, right, I have to achieve this thing. I'm going to make a list. And that's what they do. They don't pursue their particular pursuit as you would or I would. They're not you. They're not me. Other characters then give them advice on how to do it as they would do it, not as the other person would do it. And therefore they're already setting them up to fail. And so if you can get to page 17 or 18 obeying those rules, your script is already better than 95% of all other scripts. The ending would be great if you came up with something that was surprising, inevitable, wonderful, hilarious, whatever. You really want a decision point for your character when they think that all is lost. But the person reading the script has decided whether you can write probably by page 6. And definitely by page 12. So if they're still reading at page 17, you're already doing really well. And if the ending doesn't quite work, well, don't worry about that. Talk about it in the meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
So, in terms of you're not going to produce a perfect script because you're just not. I'm not. And I know what I'm doing and I'm not. The first draft of this lab forensic sitcom I wrote was awful. And I can't believe I showed it to anybody. I had an opening scene that went on for 8 pages that had 8 characters in it.
Yes.
I mean, what the heck was I thinking?
You've got to start somewhere, James.
You've got to start somewhere. Second draft was better. The third draft, it was not right. Okay, here we are. This is it. Okay, now okay. I got rid of 2 characters completely. Just had 6. But it turns out, the plot is actually a lot harder. And it's normally far too vague and doesn't even start until page 9, in which case you're nearly 2/3 of the way through your script before anything's actually happening. Your episode doesn't start until your protagonist decides to do something and start doing it. So for heaven's sake, do that in the first 3 pages.
Yeah.
And if you say, well, I need to set up this first and this first and this first, the answer is no, you don't. All you need to do is set up why this character needs to do this thing. We don't need backstory. We don't need all the other stuff. We don't need all the other characters. This script I've just written about the forensic lab, I ended up starting it in a 2-hander with one character explaining to the other character that they're finished, that this whole thing is finished. And the only kind of bright cloud on the horizon is they then realize, oh no, that's going to be even worse and all that kind of stuff. So it's fairly clear before we've even met the other characters what's at stake for the whole world, for the whole situation. So you really don't need to introduce everybody. You just need to get it going.
I dare say, I heard what you said about competitions, and it's really good to get that perspective. But I suppose one value is getting that feedback and insight. If you're a lot of them, you have to pay extra for feedback, right? But I think I can put myself in the position of the listeners and hear you saying that, going, yes, James got it. Loud and clear, understood. And then you go away and write it and you don't put that stuff into practice. And it's only through that process of doing it more often, failing, getting the feedback, having a rejection.
Yeah.
So, I think writers still need to be doing that as well. They just need to be honing the craft of plotting.
But take the script as far as you can before you show it to anybody. I mean, you say you can read it round with some friends and just read it out loud. Yeah. So, I showed the first or second draft to some various people that I know before I then had a read through which went better than I thought it would. But you do need you do need someone else's feedback. People who don't know how to read a script probably won't help you that much, but what they can do is tell you whether they understood it.
Yes, and that's quite an early barometer of the quality.
So if you know somebody who likes reading and they're intelligent and know how to read books and a script, and if you can say to them, you don't even need to say, did you like it? Do you think it was funny?
Does it make sense?
You can ask them, what was it about? Who was it about? Which characters did you like? Really? You like that one? You didn't like the other character? You didn't know what they were trying to do. Blimey, I thought it was so obvious what they were trying to do. I was almost embarrassed to type the line where he says what he's trying to do. That doesn't come across at all then, does it? No. Okay. Good
to know.
So I mean, I was amazed at the feedback I got on my second draft, where I just thought, wow, I thought some of this stuff was really on the nose, and it really wasn't. But again, when you hear something read out loud, so the moment you show the script to someone, you immediately read it through their eyes and you realize, I don't think this is funny, actually. I don't know why the first scene's too long, and then there's this and there's this and this doesn't work and this doesn't work. If some friends of yours are reading it out loud, you're listening to this scene that's now 7 pages and you just you want to kill yourself and everyone in the room to make it stop.
Yeah.
And it seemed perfectly reasonable when you were writing it and just thinking, I know 7 pages is long, but actually it's not really one scene because there's this and then there's this and then it kind of moves into this and this. And then when you're in the room, you're just like, oh my goodness, would they just stop talking? This is just infuriating. So I think even just sort of reading it out loud, you could do worse than ask a friend to read it and ask them if they understood it and just say what they liked about it. You're not asking for notes, but also bear in mind that they might just sort of take against a particular character for personal reasons. And so, you need to be a bit cagey there. But I think people assume, well, if I get notes from a professional or even a development producer who's only been doing this job for 6 months, that I'll get some really good feedback. And it's like, you might just get an opinion. So whenever I do script consultancy, which I don't do much of, but if people really want me to do it, I will. I'm always trying to think, what are you trying to do? And how can I help you make this the best version of this that you want? Rather than, I'd have much preferred it if it was about this area rather than this.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what I would prefer. But people have a very hard time sort of disassociating themselves. And that's quite an unusual thing to do, is just to go, oh, let me help you turn this into a sitcom that I definitely wouldn't watch.
Yeah.
That's quite hard to do, but I know how to do it because I've been doing this for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it then goes out the other side and I'm like, oh, do you know what? Actually, I kind of would like to see that. That sounds quite fun and interesting. So yeah, I just think beware of opinions. But if they literally didn't understand what this show was about, that, that's not an opinion. That's like, I honestly didn't know what this was. And if 3 people all say, I didn't really understand it beyond page 6, there was quite a lot of running around and shouting, didn't really know what was going on. It's like, okay, your script is not great beyond page 6. And unfortunately, you've probably set up the wrong thing. So pages 1 to 6 aren't that great either. But
yeah. Okay.
As I always say, no one asked you to do this. No one asked. It's like I could have been a dairy farmer like my dad.
Yeah.
No one asked me to be a writer. I could have got a job at Ernst & Young like everybody else who went to the University of Durham or Procter & Gamble.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to be a writer. Go on then. But it's true though, isn't it? I mean, that's there's no right to this. You don't have a right to a career as a writer.
Absolutely.
But also you can independently publish your own books. Whether you should or not is a different matter, but you can. That's the problem with making your own stuff. There are no gatekeepers, and gatekeepers
the
do
audience
occasionally
is the gatekeeper.
Yeah, but if you go to a lot of trouble to do a thing and the audience just go, what even is this? A gatekeeper
It's a useful heuristic.
Yeah, but a gatekeeper might
expensive.
Go, yeah, but a gatekeeper might go, are you sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
And you're like, do you know what, actually? It does sound ridiculous. Now I've said it out loud or whatever. So sometimes it might be good just to make one thing and just say, do people like this? And try that out and then make 10 of them. But don't make a 10-part online sitcom series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Based on 3 characters who are already flawed in a bad way.
For me, I think that also applies to those writers who will go as far as writing the scripts for those episodes. I think that it feels to me like that time could be better spent elsewhere, probably.
Yeah. Unless you're going to film them or whatever. But actually, even then, I would, if you're going to make your own series, film one, get feedback on it, and then rewrite it, and maybe even refilm it, and then make 5 more.
Yeah. James, you've talked to us a lot about various projects you're working on, which is great. It's great to hear. But if people want to keep up with you and those projects, or maybe projects down the line, what's a good way for people to follow you and keep up with your news?
The excellent platform of Substack hosts my blog called The Situation Room, which is a weekly, in fact, it's bi-weekly at the moment, which means twice a week rather than once every 2 weeks, I think. Every Friday, I'm putting out a chapter of Field Notes from a Sitcom Writer, just as a kind of this is going to be a book at some point. But yeah, and I'm also putting up links to my YouTube channel where I'm talking very specifically about how to set up a sitcom and write a sitcom. That's all I talk about on the Situation Room YouTube is situation comedy. And there aren't many other people on YouTube doing that. It seems odd that I've found a niche there that is slightly fresh snow. But yeah, so that's where people can find out more.
Excellent. Okay. Well, James, thanks so much for joining me in the Reject Pile. It's been great to hear your stories and your experience and your expertise. Thanks for sharing that with me and the listeners. I've been Luke Edwards. This has been the Reject Pile. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.